All right. And chat up.
Presenting Benny Goodman and his music.
There we are. Good evening, everybody. Hey, Martin. Hey, Octavio. Hey, Timothy. Evening all around. I'm gonna have to show you guys. I got those of you on Graceland last weekend knew that my microphone and speaker finally gave up the ghost. I got a new one now. It is all attached and ready. And it's wireless. Hey, Dana, welcome. Hey, Betsy, Timothy. Hey, Lorena and Linda. Hey, June. Hey, Rodney. Hey, Donna. Hey, Leah. New Mystericon logo. Oh yeah, I gotta get on that. I got some ideas. I got some plans. So much to do. So much to do, so much to do, so much wrong with you. That's wrong with me. Hey, Laura and Susan. Hey, Gina. Brownies, you hit one and you like, do you have like a jump drive? You could like hit it in and push it in and hit send? Hey, Miguel. Hey, Mona. Yeah, because I do in fact have an idea. Miguel, we just did a pub crawl last week. But next week is going to be drunk history, which is pretty much the same thing. Let's see. What was I going to look up? Oh, yeah. All right. Sue, don't be napping. Leah, air quality's a little better today. Casey, watch that. You know, today I had to go through all of my library accounts, but finally I found one that I could go through to get the collection that had George Eaker's speech that allegedly prompted Philip Hamilton to have a duel with him. I read through it. It's pretty innocuous, really. I mean, he would have opposed it politically and thought a couple of lines were references to his dad, but it strains the imagination that 4 months later he was still going to pick fights about it. I think the duel was mainly because Philip and his friends were being really obnoxious during the play. That's why Eaker called them damned rascals. They were acting like damned rascals. And in fact, both references to saying that it was about the speech are at the Evening Post, which had just been launched as a Federalist paper by Hamilton himself. Like a week before that paper had launched. And Mr. Cheatham at the American Citizen newspaper said that that was all crap, but then he'd say anything about anybody. And got in several duels himself. Hey, Elaine and Larry. Hey, Daddy Gail. Hey, everybody. I am having a Manhattan tonight. Next week, maybe I'll do that like cognac barrel one. That's especially strong. Hey, Eric. Hey, Betsy. While we're care for you, all I'll ever care for. I gotta show you guys something. Look, so this, as mentioned, I got a new microphone set up, but here's the cool thing.
It's Bluetooth, so watch. I can throw my voice, amaze my friends. I can just be talking in a normal volume right over here, but it sounds like it's coming from over there. Miles is looking at me like I'm nuts.
There's a little better today. Hey, Mom. I've been having way too much fun with this microphone. Oh yeah, I can totally set it behind a grave. Like, totally. I'm also experimenting with, like, having it be like this instead of over my head. I could just have it kind of be like this. And just be like...
Hey, good looking, we'll be back to pick you up later. We're gonna load this trucking convoy across the USA. Convoy.
Yeah, it sounded like it was coming from right there, didn't it? Throw your voice, amaze your friends. And in here, it's going to echo a little bit more than it will out in the wild. Hey, Ellen, evening, Scott. Can I use multiple speakers? Well, goodness knows I've got enough of them set up in here. I got the 2 on the desk. I got the 2 back over there. I got the 5-1 set up over here. I bet I could do some shit with that. But no, I want to keep this mic connected to just this speaker. Hey. Hey, Kathy. We did have some storms go through here today. And now it's getting hot in here. I need to like get my air back on. Martin, yes, they could. Yeah, I've never said there's no way anybody could have tricked me on it. Of course they could have. I didn't catch them if they did. And they probably would have said something other than sorry beefalo. Arlie, it's a little better today than it was yesterday anyway. I'm still mostly staying inside. It's hot is what it is now. Leah, congratulations there. Oh, I'm tired tonight. Yeah, it's hot and muggy outside. Not my style. I ate a whole thing of ice cream. Hey, Beth. Welcome along, everybody. We'll be getting started pretty soon here. Martin, I just did. Help, I fell down a well. What is it, Priya? Did Grandpa fall down a well again? That's just the microphone.
When they played by Benny Goodman.
Don't worry.
Another one just in the same vein, Rosetta.
Alexa, clear my notifications. Sorry, guys. Laura, that does sound good. I don't know if I have any brandy. Brandy! Well, we're singing 70s AM Gold. Priya, what are you on about? You want to chase this mouse? Miles is sitting over in the window at present. He doesn't look great. We'll do it like this, yeah. And apparently the Brandy song was what prompted Kiss to write Hard Luck Woman. Like, that made Kiss want to write a song? You'll be a hard luck Wookie, baby, till you find your hand. Hey everybody, we're just gonna let my Benny Goodman finish up this tune. Maybe we'll get started here properly. Hey Laura, we've still been around, you know. I had barely missed a day in these past few years. Starting to wear on me a little bit right now. With the new book project that's just kicking my butt. I kind of underestimated what a big project that is. There are side quests all over the place, and I gotta learn about like which newspaper was which in which year of New York, because the Evening Post was very different in 1795 versus 1801, etc. But I can't go away. You'll all leave me. But all right, that is Benny Goodman coming to you live from the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago, the Joseph Urban Room. Benny Goodman, of course. We will be at the Congress Hotel for Mystericon in 2023, coming up in just a few months, which means I really got to go on those really cool promotional material ideas that I had. One more thing. But anyway, I just turned out the Benny. That means I need to switch to this particular screen. Priya, what is your deal? So welcome along, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. I've been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. I've got about a dozen Chicago history books out. I'm on the History Channel and the Travel Channel all the time. So I am, in fact, incredibly famous, and sometimes I even get that Superman curl going, which they never have anymore. Among my books, Smart Aleck's Guide to American History, back when they made money. Mysterious Chicago, the book. H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil. Murder Maps USA, new from Thames and Hudson. And Graceland Cemetery, Chicago Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. That one is, of course, the most relevant for what we're talking about tonight. Graceland Cemetery is known as the Cemetery of Architects. And when Graceland first asked me to do this book, when I had a phone call with the board, they said, can you just leave the architects out? Like, people are going to get really mad if they get the Graceland book and it doesn't have the architects. One thing I did do is I kind of de-emphasized people that already have biographies about them. They said, like, can you just like leave out like the Civil War generals and stuff? There really aren't that many of those. Fair share. But all right, so Graceland is known as the Cemetery of Architects. I couldn't just leave them out of the book. They're definitely in the book. Don't worry if you're on the fence about buying it. But they're not the whole focus. There's a lot of other people there besides architects, a lot of other fascinating people. But tonight, we are going to do the architecture tour. Now, normally, I don't really do too many architects on the walking tours there because I generally feel like seeing an architect's grave is only of meaning if you actually know the architect's work, which just walking around on a walking tour, you may or may not. But here in the virtual tour realm, we are able to show you some pictures and examples so you know what we're talking about. So we're going to talk a little bit about architectural styles. This is the old federal building in Chicago. This is where Al Capone was put on trial for tax evasion. This is a style known as Beaux-Arts, also sometimes neoclassical. They're not exactly interchangeable, but for all intents and purposes, they are. So this is the style that was popular in the late 19th, early 20th century. Lots of Greek and Roman influences, lots of columns, lots of domes, lots of ornamentation. This one I've kind of described as like if the Field Museum had the state capitol land on top of it. Field Museum, of course, is very much a neoclassical thing. Then after the Beaux-Arts style kind of withered away, we had a couple of different things. For one thing, we had the Chicago School of Architecture, which updated that a little bit. It streamlined it quite a bit and made it a little bit more practical for the modern everyday world. This one up over here is the Marquette Building by Holabird and Roche. Over here we got the Fisher Building by the Burnham and Company, but that's a different Chicago building. That is the Chicago Building by Holabird and Roche. One of them kind of built around a couple of guidelines is over there on the Rookery, but then in the middle we get what came next, which was Art Deco. This is kind of my favorite. Streamlined verticality, simple geometric arts, much cleaner lines than you would see in something like Beaux-Arts. From here you can see both the columns and the other stuff. Probably the most famous example of Art Deco would be the Chrysler Building in New York City. This is supposed to look like tires all stacked together up at the top, because, you know, it's Chrysler. In Chicago, we've also got the Carbide and Carbon Building, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on. Now, eventually, people did decide that these sort of things were a little too fancy. You got to remember, 1920s and 30s, the Depression hit, and we had Germany between the world wars, where the idea where a lot of places became make as much building as you can with as little materials as you can. So we had the style that came to be known as modernism. Right about here, you can see this very plain black rectangle building. It's the old IBM building by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who was especially known as the modernist guy. He used to say, less is more. That was sort of his mantra. That and God is in the details. Now, he gets a lot of flack, especially from like freshman architecture students for just making plain black boxes. But if you get really into the details of a Mies building, you can find that there are never any seams. You can never see the screws. You can never really be inside of it because he didn't think about whether they'd be comfortable one little bit. But beyond that, starting about the 1960s, you start seeing brutalism. Now, the modernists like to emphasize the simple beauty of the raw materials. The brutalists were like that on steroids. They liked raw materials too, but they wanted more raw materials, like here at the FBI building. Big hulking slabs of concrete and cement. But then we moved into postmodernism. When people thought less is more, that's a bore. So we started saying, well, why don't we take some of those old styles and update them for the 80s and 90s? Why don't we take these plain black boxes and paint them, bend them around a little bit? So you get things like the United Building, 77 Wacker, 1990, to Stefano and Partners, Ricardo Bofill, the architect. You look up top there, it's got like a colonnade of columns. It's got a Greek-style pediment roof up on the top. A few of the columns extend all the way down to tie the whole building together. So this kind of mixes modern styles with classical styles. Postmodernism. And this is another Bofill building, the Citadel Building. 311 South Wacker is kind of an update on the old Gothic skyscrapers, taking Gothic skyscrapers and making them new for the 90s. But this is also postmodern. See, all of these buildings are postmodern. It's a very broad topic. You can kind of make it up as you go along. But we'll both move back a little bit here. So let's start going into Graceland Cemetery. We've got examples of all of these. Just beyond the Eternal Silence statue, who, this being Pride Month, is just waiting to rip off those robes and show off his awesome lingerie, not unlike Dr. Frank in Rocky Horror. And over here beyond the Kinsey plot, I always feel like Eternal Silence has to keep an eye on Mr. Kinsey. Arlie, Frank Gehry is constructivism generally. Constructivism is like where the building looks like a pile of things you would use to build a building, more than a proper building. You ever see that Simpsons where Jimbo's like, "Hey Frank Gehry, you like curvilinear forms much?" Here's a guy who didn't traffic too much in curvilinear forms, but every now and then. This is a monument to the approximate place where the ashes of William LeBaron Jenney were scattered. William LeBaron Jenney was the architect who developed steel frame construction. In the old days, buildings used load-bearing walls that were not really supporting their own weight. They'd have to be like 6 feet thick at the bottom. You could only get up about 10 floors or so before they start sinking into the ground. Jenney developed steel frame construction. Now, the old legend is that he saw his wife stacking up books on top of a birdcage and thought, Eureka! And may or may not have actually happened, but he came up with this idea that you just build a skeleton for the building, then everything else can just get draped over that skeleton like a curtain. That allowed them to make much lighter buildings that could go an awful lot taller. This one, I think a lot of you saw Patty Swanson's lecture about this, about how this was in fact the first skyscraper by most definitions of the word. Now, the term skyscraper is a term for a building. You see it in newspapers referring to really tall hats going back to the early 1800s or probably before that. The first time it was used for buildings was in the Chicago Tribune, but it was talking about buildings in New York. The article opens with, do you know what a dude is? Do you have dudes in Chicago? We have no end of them in New York, and they make no end of fun. A dude was like a fop or a dandy. Or a dude bro, really, is what it was. But really, by most metrics, this one using the steel frame construction was what we would consider the first modern skyscraper. William LeBaron Jenney also did a lot of the landscape work here at Graceland. And his company, Jenney and Mundy, designed this bench, which is currently on the walking tour route for the Lyon family. Also, Cornelia Conger and Billy Lyon show up in the stories here quite a bit. Billy Lyon, who said, a gentleman who prefers the company of men and theater folk as much as I do has no business getting married. Happy Pride Month, everybody. Now, it can use a bit of a cleanup right now, but initially this was designed for people to come hang out. People come out and read and just enjoy the benchiness of it. Like this guy is doing in the smashing hat, a little overdressed for most weather, I would say. You could kind of use a cleanup, but we've kind of lost the idea that cemeteries were supposed to be places of recreation. Oh, good, my air just came on. Let's move on up. Presently, this is where Hudson the Duck has been perching. Haven't seen Hudson in a week or two. But for a while, Hudson the Duck was just hanging out on this bridge all the time. Walking over to one of the contemporaries of Mr. LeBaron Jenney, who also primarily worked in the Beaux-Arts school, didn't really do a lot of designing himself. He had guys like Roots and Charles Boulder Atwood and Fred Dinkelberg to do the actual design work. But here we have a Daniel Burnham. Or as Patty Swanson calls him, my 19th century boyfriend. So unlike a lot of these guys, he didn't turn out to be kind of a slimeball. I often say 1970s rock stars have nothing on turn of the 20th century architects. But Daniel Burnham was a city planner in Chicago, but also an architect. His firm Burnham and Root did things like the Rookery Building down on LaSalle Street, one of the finest buildings anywhere. Also in New York, he did the Flatiron Building, a collaboration with Fred Dinkelberg, a designer of his who doesn't get nearly as much credit as he ought to, and is buried across the street at Wonder Cemetery. In 1909, he wrote up the Plan of Chicago, which is a landmark in the very field of urban planning. We didn't follow it to the letter or anything, but we followed quite a bit of it. Now, by one estimation, the one story you hear quite a bit is that his map for Chicago was based on Emanuel Swedenborg, the Swedish philosopher and mystic's map of heaven. He'd been raised in Swedenborgian schools. His father was a Swedenborgian minister, so it's entirely possible. I haven't dug through enough of Swedenborg's work to know if that's exactly correct, because, frankly, there's a lot of them. It's a lot to get through. But Burnham's most famous quote was, "Make no little plans. They have no magic in them to stir men's blood, and probably themselves will not be realized. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and in work." And for the longest time, us Chicago historians would be like, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, whenever that story came up, because it was thought to be an apocryphal quote. Until I was doing research for the Graceland Cemetery book, and I found it. It was a speech she made in the UK in 1910, and there it was, word for word. Make no little plans. They have no magic in them to stir men's blood. I like that. When I meet him later, I'll convince him to include women in the sequel. Here's how it looks in the snow. Now we're just going to move over to the side a little bit here. Now whoever made this snowman was making little plans. I'm just going to say. We'll move over next to him. He also said in that speech, remember, our sons will do things to astound us. If this was the Canadian national anthem, somebody would shout daughters too. But this is Daniel Burnham Jr. Kind of hard to get a good picture of this guy. It's one of those guys I can really only get a picture of him out of like his passport photos. But Burnham and Burnham, he and his brother Hubert, built buildings such as the Clark Adams building, which would look more like an Art Deco building if they cleaned it. It's covered in an awful lot of soot right now and has been for many years. Probably they are better known for the Carbide and Carbon building, one of my absolute favorites, the green and gold one. That for a long time, I thought it was just an urban legend that they wanted it to look like a champagne bottle. But then somebody sent me a bit of his diary saying that the builders did want it to be the color of an old champagne bottle. So, yeah, I love it when an urban legend like that actually does turn out to be true. It seems to happen quite a bit with Daniel Burnham. That's part of the magic to stir men's blood. Now, Burnham's partner initially, when he first came to Chicago, was John Wellborn Root. He was the guy who did most of the work. Got sick and died in the early 1890s. His job was taken by Charles Bowler Atwood, whose one of his first jobs was to make this gravestone for his predecessor. Don't know how much you'd like that, but mixed in with the Celtic cross is a design that Root did for the Phoenix building. I always thought that was pretty cool. There's the Phoenix building. You see the arch right there, matching up with it. Yeah. See, there's the arch. There's the arch. The row of columns up on the top there. You can see it a little bit better there. You can also see that they moved it around a little bit. There were going to be two in the middle, not just the one in the middle. Interesting. I never noticed that before. But this is John Wellborn Root Jr. over here, his son, who eventually teamed up with Mr. Holabird Jr., we'll see the Holabirds in just a second, to become the rock stars of Art Deco, doing things like the Board of Trade building. Here we got the Rookery by Burnham and Root, then Holabird and Root's Board of Trade building from 1930. Also things like 333 North Michigan over there on the left. You can see the Carbide and Carbon in the background. And the Chicago Daily News building, which is kind of like an Art Deco version of a Sphinx. He did that in collaboration with Mr. Holabird Jr. Now, Holabird initially worked with Holabird and Roche. Holabird and Roche were a couple of guys who came out of William LeBaron-Jenney's office and started their own firm, also still using steel frame construction to build things like, as previously seen, the Marquette building. To the left is Burnham and Dinkelberg. It's more of a close-up view of that one. This is what they call the Chicago School. It's made also known as the Commercial School. Office building architecture. They also did the chapel right here at Graceland Cemetery. That's a Holabird and Root joint. The Board of Trade and the Rookery is mentioned. 333 North Michigan. They became really the rock stars of Art Deco. If you see a good Art Deco building in Chicago, excellent chance it's a Burnham and Root. Also, just check quickly over here. There are a couple of monuments, such as the Honoré Vault. And across from that, Mr. Honoré's daughter, Bertha, who became Bertha Palmer, just behind the trees, but you'll see it. These are a couple of examples of monuments. The architects aren't buried here, but these are designed by McKim, Mead, and White, who are best known for, really more for architecture in New York, and also for Stanford White's drunken antics and lecherous antics. Lecherous is a good word for it. They also did the Kimball Monument. This is for Mr. and Mrs. Kimball of Kimball Pianos fame. That's most of what they did you can trace in Chicago. They built, Mr. White made one mansion that we talk about occasionally in the Gold Coast. Now broken into condos. Billy Corgan lived there for a while. In the 50s, it was a high school for the worst kids in the city, according to a friend of mine who was among them. But just beyond them is the architect Louis Sullivan. I tend to call him Louis. Some people actually pronounce the S. But with an Henri there, I just don't want to say Louis Henry Sullivan. Now, Sullivan came out of the Chicago School and Prairie School of Architecture and got a little bit more ornate, designing things like the Krause Music Store, which is in Lincoln Square. This is one of his last buildings that he designed. But he was into lots of highly ornate stuff, including, like, say, this jewel box bank. Late in life, he was having trouble getting big city commissions. He was known as unreliable. He'd drunk up a lot of his money, and he was falling out of favor artistically and stylistically, but he was still getting commissions to do things like the Jewel Box Bank here in Grinnell, Iowa, which you can still go by. I went by and got this picture of it myself. Grandma Bell out there in the chat used to bank there, I believe. But now, you know, they got him because he was cheap at the time, but now they've got signs on the interstate pointing you to the Louis Sullivan Jewel Box Bank. Now, he also designed a couple of monuments, a couple of mausoleums in the cemetery, including, this is the Ryerson Mausoleum. This is not really Sullivan's normal style. This is two Egyptian styles. It's a pyramid on top of a mastaba. On the inside, we'll just show this really quickly. Layla got this picture, but I mentioned it a while ago on the last tour that the key cabinet at Graceland is really cool. They got a lot of these Scooby-Doo looking keys. And if you use them to open up this, there's a big spooky looking bust of Mr. Ryerson on the inside. I'll just show a tiny of them. Probably won't get in trouble for that. But Sullivan also did the Getty Mausoleum. Mr. Getty was in the lumber business in the same firm as Mr. Ryerson. And about the same time, they hired Louis Sullivan to design their mausoleums. Kind of conveniently, too. Mr. Getty's wife died the next year. I shouldn't say conveniently, but the timing worked out well. There's no way around that. This one is almost a perfect example of Sullivan's architectural style. Everything we associate with Sullivan is here. The proportions, the arch, the ornamentation. This building itself is a landmark. Frank Lloyd Wright famously said that this monument is a work of art the way a Shakespeare sonnet is a work of art. Now, it is sometimes said that Sullivan also designed this one for Louis Boldenweck, but he probably didn't. And you can see why people would think that. It's the same kind of style, arches, ornate ornamentation. And occasionally I have seen it suggested that he might have designed this one here for Gustav Wilk. But he is not known to have, in fact, more likely Gustav Wilk designed this one himself. Now, he was a builder, a contractor more than an architect. He was one of the first builders to make use of William LeBaron Jennings' steel frame construction concept. Most notably, he built the Texas State Capitol out of pink granite. But the architect who was involved in this flaked, and Wilk ended up doing most of the architecture himself too. Legend has it that he built his own mausoleum out of the granite from the same quarry, which is entirely possible. The mausoleum was built years before he actually needed it. A lot of these mausoleums were built a long time before they actually needed them. But it almost feels like, he could have even said it in Mr. Getty's case, it almost just feels like bad luck. Once you get the mausoleum, you think like nature just has to fill it up. Nature abhors a vacuum. But then again, I do find things at like Graceland and at Trinity and St. Paul's in New York, all these vaults that didn't get used until 100 years after they were built. Move on up a bit here. Now, this is another one that's just an example of one built by. Well, actually, there's two of them here. First, for one thing, this is by Graham Anderson, Probst, and White, these columns. I've skipped a button. Let's unskip that button. This is probably the monument most visible from the L train if you go by on the red line. Also, presently, there's a pride flag in front of it. But this is a monument to Sheldon Anderson of the architectural firm of Graham Anderson, Probst, and White, who did things like the Wrigley Building downtown. Or, say, the Merchandise Mart. This is from 1930. The Wrigley Building was 1920. They hadn't quite jumped on the Art Deco wave yet. Or the Civic Opera Building, which is essentially a Beaux-Arts style building planted onto an Art Deco frame, is how I've sometimes described it. And then this is what they did in 1929 and 1950. They were making stuff like this thing. That General Growth Properties building that got torn down a couple of years ago on the Chicago River. I always liked this one personally. It looks like those windows in the middle are going to turn into teeth and start chomping on you like a scene from Metropolis or something. I like it because it's just so different from every other building on the river. A little bit of a touch of what they call the Space Age Gothic school of architecture. 1950s modern atomic age stuff, which we don't have that much of in Chicago. But just beyond, Graham Anderson, Probst, and White also designed the Chalmers Monument here with the columns. But right next to that is a guy by the name of Lars Hallberg, another architect. And he's on every single architectural boat tour, but hardly ever really gets named. Like every architectural boat tour, when approaching the merchandise mart, comes up to the old Chase Sandburn Coffee Warehouse, which is pointed out as about the best example you see on the river of the Chicago School of Architecture. It even says the Chicago School right on there, so it's like a perfect cue card. That's actually a reference to like the Chicago School of Psychiatry. Well, that was one of his. He also did a number of houses around the Gold Coast area. Lawrence or Lars Gustav Hallberg. Sorry, Kristen, I didn't have a picture of the side loaded in. I thought I did. The cool skyscrapers and skylines built right into the side of the Louis Sullivan Mausoleum. I made this drink real stiff. You can probably tell. Next week is the drunk history one. We'll see how much fun we can have with that. But over here in the Columbarium, first you got Barbara Langtot on the right. She's from the Chicago Architecture Foundation. She did a whole book about Graceland Cemetery architecture herself some years back. Got to meet her last year. She was just delightful. And I was always afraid she's going to be mad about my book, but she was not. I was so happy to hear that. And she was glad that I had included her next door neighbor when she's eventually interred here, Marion Mahoney Griffin. Probably the most prominent woman architect known to be at Graceland. Now, Marion Mahoney Griffin worked for Frank Lloyd Wright. Primarily what she did was a lot of the drawings and artwork, these Japanese landscape-style paintings, which were published in the 1920s, and really, in the 1920s and before, really these more than anything else were what made Frank Lloyd Wright famous. As you could only actually see so many Frank Lloyd Wright buildings if you were the average person at the time, but these were published and went around, and this is what made him famous. She also collaborated with Richard Bachman, who did the doorway here on the Fisher Columbarium. But she did not think much of Frank Lloyd Wright. Marion was quoted as saying that he was a canker sore who originated very little but spent most of his time claiming everything and swiping everything, whose vanity and malice killed the so-called Chicago movement. Tell him, Marion. She married Walter Burley Griffin, another architect who was buried in India, where he died. Well, also, this is a very well-known architect around Chicago. I'm a little surprised he's not a better-known architect within the cemetery. Dwight Perkins is over here, who is generally known for school building. What do they call him, Dwight Perkins? The school builder. Nah. He built such things as Schertz High School and the Prairie School of Architecture, and Lane Tech High School, though Lane Tech people do not want to hear that they and Carl Schultz had the same architect. Grow up, guys. And also in the Prairie School, Cafe Brower in Lincoln Park. This is where the Lincoln Park October Ghost Tours start and end every year. And those are all set for Tuesdays and Wednesdays this year as well. I'll be going right from Mystericon to starting those up. What have I done? Let's move on from the Hollowbirds a bit. This is the place that we know as Pride Rock, because the coyotes like kind of perching there like they're in Pride Rock. Realized here I'm missing a couple of pictures, but okay. One thing, we are over in the guy here's in his cousin's family plot, perhaps best known for hosting Carolyn Kirkland, who was Madam X, the gossip columnist of the Chicago Tribune, shown here writing her columns that she described as reeking with indiscretion, and with what can only be described as a shit-eating grin. Her plot is right over here on Pride Rock. Right next to her, or right nearby, we'll pass her up, and just beyond is Boyd Hill, who I really came across by accident. I was looking up Carolyn's file in the Graceland office. There was a little clipping. Often there's nothing biographical in the files, but there was a newspaper clipping talking about Boyd Hill in the same plot, who was the architect behind things like the Aragon Ballroom, where Layla and I occasionally run tours. Oh yeah, let's see some video of that. Where Bronco Billy's apartment used to be, right to here. Also, just around the corner from this was the Lawrence Hotel. That's been they've taken off some of the ornamentation now, so it doesn't look quite as apparent that it's by the same guy. But in a picture like this, you can see these are both the work of Boyd Hill. I was going to wander up through the section here a little bit. Another one, the architect himself is not present, but we'll bring him up. Now, coming up just below me is a Prairie School monument. Prairie School typically emphasizes the horizontal over the vertical, but this is generally referred to as a Prairie School monument, in the base of which is the ashes of Ernst Schmidt, the most respected radical anarchist in Chicago in the 1800s. But this was designed for him by his son, Richard Schmidt, an architect, who also designed the Wrigley Mansion here in Chicago. I love that one. It's right there in Lincoln Park. Got a really cool solarium in the background. And also several brewery buildings for the Schoenhofen Brewery Company, which makes a special sense that not only did he build a lot of Schoenhofen's breweries, he also built Schoenhofen's mausoleum. This was one of those connections it was really cool to find during the book. It's just like poking around online, you won't see that the guy who designed this monument also designed the much smaller one for his father. But this fantastic pyramid design. I love this one. It was kind of convenient this week when the microphone wasn't working, so I could just stand in the doorway and the voice, everything travels. Brewery design wasn't a really big thing. They tended to be pretty industrial, really. Right up over here is Frederick Wolff, an architect himself. Now, typically, statues in cemeteries are pointing upwards or looking upwards. To see one going down is a little bit jarring. Frederick Wolff did things such as the Anna Wolff House here in Chicago and the Gold Coast, but up in Milwaukee a little bit more, he did things like the Schlitz Ice House. Just it's a little bit less industrial looking than your average brewery. You see a lot of buildings like this in Milwaukee. Just up from there, this very cool one for Howard Vander and Schultz. He isn't really known for his skyscrapers. He's more known for smaller developments. This is a really cool thing. It's got Psalm 23 written out on the ball up there. It's supposed to be like an old IBM Selectric typewriter ball. But Howard Vander and Shaw designed the first proper shopping center. This was up in Lake Forest, still the first and still kind of unequal to the cell phone signal there. Absolutely sucks, which makes it hard to do mini tours from there without getting really frustrated after driving all that way. But still absolutely unequaled, I think. Howard Vander and Shaw, primarily known for house design. He's got a lot of house designs around the Chicago and the North Shore area. This is the Market Square. There's also a statue here by his daughter, Sylvia Shaw Judson, but that's a whole other tour. Let me back this up a little bit. This is the Goodman Mausoleum right on the lake. Which itself was designed by Howard Vander and Shaw. We'll go around to the front here. And if we pop across the lake, this is what it looks like on the other side. It goes right up to the water. And from there, we can get to the grave of one of my favorite architects to talk about. Bruce Goff. Now, Bruce Goff was an architect back in the 1950s when most people were still doing less is more type stuff. Bruce Goff was doing stuff that looked like this. Or like this. I love this place. Or like this. Sometimes I just tell people, are you familiar with Pee-wee's Playhouse? Are you also familiar with psychedelic drugs? You mix them all together, that's about what you get. Now, the piece of glass on there is known as cullet. It's also called slag glass, but cullet sounds cooler. It is the runoff from a glass bending oven. And he liked to build with this stuff. Stuff like this. In fact, hang on a second. I actually have some here. This is actually, if I really zoom in, maybe we can tell exactly which one this is. Make this a little bit bigger. This is a piece of cullet from this building. It burned down several years ago. But I bought a few pieces of the cullet on eBay just recently from a guy who was like the executor of the estate. And he was able to like send me pictures of Goff's ashes being interred in that spot, which is nice because I wasn't totally sure it wasn't just a cenotaph. But this is some of it. I keep meaning to bring it on the tour with me, and I keep forgetting to bring it on the tour with me. I had a little bit of buyer's remorse over it. I thought, I'll just put in the opening bid, and that'll be cool for a second there. So I saw this cool Agatha Christie movie one time where a guy would go to art auctions and always put in the first bid. And he would explain, like, you see, for the 10 seconds until somebody else puts in a bid, I own that picture. But I ended up winning. It was more than I usually spend for a few rocks. But still, these are really cool. So we'll hold it up and show it off a bit. Now, this is the one that is in Chicago proper, down in the Andersonville area. This is the Myron Bachman house that he redesigned. Initially, it was a much more mundane-looking 1890 style house, but he busted into it and made it into like this. It's been getting restored in recent years. Myron Bachman used this place as a recording studio, but he didn't record like jazz artists or anything. It was like air checks. Here he is at his most bland. But this is almost kind of ties it in with like the International School. International was kind of simultaneous with modernism. Whereas modernism is elegance, International is like modernism without the elegance. That ties us in. Right next to Bruce Goff is Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, the modernism guy. Less is more, plain black boxes, buried underneath a plain black box. Needs a little bit of a dusting in this picture. But there's Mies. God is in the details, he would say. Things like the IBM building in Federal Plaza. Now this one, you can see the way that all these windows line up. It is planned, planned down to the 1/4 of an inch. Let's move up over here to a recent one. Now, just recently, I took some architects around Graceland, and one of their first questions for me is, hey, is Tigerman here? Where'd they plant that jerk at? They had some stories about all Stanley Tigerman. And Tigerman, to his credit, like late in life, there's an interview, like, I've been reading transcripts of my interviews, and my God, I'm a jerk. But here's Stanley Tigerman. He supposedly won a cutest baby contest at the 1933 World's Fair. And you really do just want to reach out and pinch his cheeks, don't you? First thing he did was the Boardwalk Apartments, which is essentially the International School of Architecture. Maybe a little bit of modernism, but looking pretty sleek there. You kind of see, you can imagine James Bond hanging out in this place. Then he got a little bit more playful with the building here, the Uptown Pensacola, which you can actually see from his grave at Graceland Cemetery if you look through the trees enough at the right time of year. And then buildings like the Animal Crackers building in Highland Park. I'm going to go to that one of these days. and the Holocaust Memorial Building. There's a lot of symbolism in this building. He made it a little bit playful intentionally as a giant up yours to the Nazis. You can see the dark turning into the light over here. You see the dark on the left and then the rising sun over on the right. A lot of little touches like that. And just a few blocks from Graceland, there is this mural. You can't really see it from the inside, but it is a Tigerman mural in a Tigerman building, where he has this quote, "Well, I know where my future lies. Graceland Cemetery." Somebody just said I skipped Walter Netsch. Oh, did I? Did I, Kristen? Did I now? Here's Walter Netsch, brutalist architect who designed University Hall on the University of Illinois at Chicago campus, which tends to top some lists, possibly not the list that Mr. Netsch would want. We'll just move over from him a second. Past Mr. Featherstone, who made bicycles and velocipedes available to the public. And here we have got Bruce Graham and Fazler Khan, partners who designed. Well, Khan over on the left there did the engineering, where Graham did the design for things like the Sears Tower. Fazler Khan was the Einstein of structural engineering. Right up to the last second, I accidentally was calling him Bruce Campbell in the Graceland Cemetery book. We managed to fix that last second. That would have been, frankly, embarrassing. That's the zombie guy. And just beyond, market for Jacques Brownson. You can see this is a whole area. He did the Daly Center with the Picasso in front of it. And next to him, Stanislaw Gladych, who did things like Chase Tower here in Chicago. That swooping one. And the brutalist FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. You can see this is kind of the whole architects section right around here. And in fact, I can name prominent architects who already have a space reserved here. I won't name names, but I could. We're to cover the architectural photographer, Richard Nickel. There was a time we were tearing down a lot of these buildings in Chicago. Richard Nickel was an architectural photographer who would bust in and try to document them before they were gone forever. So his portraits of a lost city, Richard Nickel's Chicago. Eventually, the problem is busting into these places was not necessarily safe. I ended up dying inside of one of them. But he was able to document a lot of the interiors of these places that otherwise would just be completely lost. But all right, everybody. So, quick plug for the upcoming events. Next Thursday night, we're going to be doing the Drunk History Ghost Tour shenanigans. This means I'll be doing a virtual ghost tour, but first I'm going to have a few. So, tonight I poured this a little bit stiffer than I intended to, but it was kind of a trick that I've occasionally been known to do on tours that I've done over and over again. When I was working the architectural boat tours, doing the same tour 4 times a day, the last tour of the day was my martini tour, where I would switch to the other water bottle, just to keep it interesting. For myself. Possibly for the crew as well. And then July 8th, it's selling better than I expected it to, but we got Architecture of Mysterious Chicago coming up on July 8th. After that, I'll still try to figure this stuff out. We're still kind of going a week at a time. I got a whole new project. I don't know if you saw it announced today. I'll be doing for Algonquin Press a book about the cemeteries in Manhattan, which has been, the research is, which is like been one side quest after another. Like, what was the difference between the 1795 Evening Post and the 1801 Evening Post? It's pretty clear, but I got to know this kind of stuff, and I didn't think I would have to know this kind of stuff. But in any case, everybody, thanks for helping me keep the lights on with stuff like this in the summer when I can't do as much work as I normally would, perhaps. But thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. Here's the Benny Goodman to come back on, and we will just hang out. And watch out, we will have a logo for Mystericon 3 coming up really soon. Plus, I got some cool ideas for merch. Here's Benny. Why did Bruce play Elvis? I wouldn't say I met Bruce. We're assuming we're talking about Springsteen, but I did get his autograph one time. Yeah, the neon sign needs to be in there for sure. I was just thinking I need some new t-shirts. I ordered that one that's a Metallica shirt just like the one Beavis wears that you might have seen this morning. Carol, I hope not. But we don't know yet. Long term for sure. Hey, Lyric, thanks for stopping by. Hey, Lee, glad to hear that. I occasionally, about once every few months, people will send me like tech support questions on Patreon. I don't own Patreon. I'm just a client on there. I don't have access to anybody's accounts. I can't find your password for you. What would my dream tour be able to give? I'd love to give a proper tour at Graceland and St. Paul's. I mean, Trinity and St. Paul's in New York. You really just can't practically do it, though, because you can only get like 5-10 people at a time there. I have to like charge that. And I like to keep my prices low. No, Octavio, we do not need a Mysterious Chicago brand boomstick. Lightsaber, maybe. Those tours after the con. Heather, I can tell you Tuesdays and Wednesdays will be the Lincoln Park ones. The Lincoln Park Zoo ones.
And that would put rhythm in the beat of a wooden Indian. That was the beautiful tall rag, Benny Goodman's own arrangement. Now, popular tune, Thanks a Million.
I'll start getting. I got to start getting October dates up pretty soon. I really should. Any Rose Hill tours coming up in person? Probably in a couple of weeks, Ash. That might be what we do on the 15th. That's right, Susan. I eliminate the middleman and pass the savings on to you. Should I throw my voice and amaze my friends again? While we're doing old commercials. Have I gotten any vault pictures from Trinity? I've seen a couple. I don't have any good ones. They'd have to do some digging for me to get a proper one. They might have some in the archives. But even then, I doubt it. Kathleen, I just got to get everything confirmed with the boat. That's kind of tricky. They have me so stressed out every time. I'm fine. So kind of... This is cullet. Maybe I can auction one of these. I got 3 chunks of this. Maybe I can auction one of them off or something. Make it a door prize. Not a raffle. We don't do raffles around here. No gambling. I'm not sure I can make mysterious Chicago shawls. It'd have to be like ponchos or something. Or I could just like cram this into the wall really hard.
Down Harlem Way, they're all trucking.
Have I been inside any of the forbidden mausoleums at Graceland where they look locked up for 100 years? I think the only one you would really call forbidden, I think, that I don't at least know kind of what it looks like on the inside. I haven't seen inside of Lavinia Lane, and I haven't seen inside of Ludwig Wolf. And those ones, they don't open up. Katie, I've got people who can crochet. I know some knitters. I know some knitters. Eileen, I'm glad to hear that. Truckin'. No, it didn't take long. All over town. Well, yep, I polished off half a whole Trader Joe's s'mores this afternoon. I didn't mean to do it, but I did. While watching the new Beavis and Butthead, which I laughed out loud a couple of times. And I think what is probably the series finale of the other two, which was just on point this season. Which mausoleums, Graceland or otherwise, would you want to peek inside of? Ludwig Wolf. That's Ludwig and Lavinia, the ones that I know I can't. For the most part, I kind of know what they look like. I want to see all of the Trinity ones, though, the ones that are buried. I want to see how the stairs work, because I can't ever picture it properly. Where is Miles? Miles is over here in the window this whole time. Miles? You don't want to come hang out? At Trader Joe's s'mores ice cream, I've had better s'mores ice cream, honestly. Trader Joe's does a lot of things well. Ice cream is not their best. They have some good stuff, but hit or miss. Here's Miles. Oh. Okay. Back to the window. Here you go, buddy. Back where you were. He'll be climbing my leg in about 5 seconds. In 3, 2, 1. Miles is sniffing the cullet expectantly. Yeah? Is that in your way, Miles? Is the slag glass all up in your way? Yeah. Hey, what if I froze this and put it in my drink? Nah. Aw, Eric, that sounds good. Where are the other two cats? I do not know. Probably up to no good. Kristen, I usually do see it. I probably don't. Oh, Miles. You still like me even if I go and come back, right? Yeah. Oh, you're looking extra good today, Miles. I try to keep the camera from showing too much Miles' butt. Yeah. That is correct.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago and dance some more to Benny Goodman and his orchestra and hear Helen Ward sing Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Bourbon soaked cherry. You can't beat it. Scrambled egg with ketchup. Nothing like it. Thank you, Ash. Miles. Miles. Okay, it's fair. It's fair. I woke you up. I woke you up to come do the TV. Only fair that you get to come and get all the attention now. Yeah, Aaron, I've definitely seen that. It probably was falling apart, so they just buried it. Which is something they'll probably have to do with Ludwig Wolf eventually. Possibly a couple of others. Susan, oh yes, there will be multiple new pieces of Mystericon merchandise which I'll put up pretty soon. I got a couple ideas for what I'm going to do. I just haven't totally figured out how to make it really pop yet. Oh, Miles, purr. Those talking button things? No. Good night, Darlene.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Benny Goodman.
Darlene, good night. Is that a Bunsen Honeydew puppet? No, Elaine, this is that's Hipster Bert over here. Hipster Bert. Miles. See this guy here? A rare look at the opposite end. All these damn books. You know, I've been reading a print book lately. My friend Ray just put out this book of his collection of interviews with Bob Dylan band members. It's like, you have to hold it open and turn all the pages and like set it down in such a way that you don't lose your place. And you keep having to hold it up all the time. Who convinced us these things were good? You have to turn on a light to be able to see it. Hey, Diane. Enjoy the wedding. Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, second at trivia. Okay. I'm reading that wrong. I feel stupid. And contagious. Did Priya just come in? I didn't see Priya. I heard her over there. Where'd Priya come in? Miles just popped back up. Oh yeah, Priya is under the ottoman over there. Miles. Milesy baby. Where's the T31? I've been drinking a Manhattan all night. But I finished the Manhattan. It was a stiffer pour than I expected. I added a little bit more of a Buffalo Trace just to kind of keep myself given. I don't know what to do with my hands, you know? I don't know what I should do with my hands when I talk to you. And you don't know where you should look, so you look at my hands. Signature drink for Khan. Haven't stopped to think about it yet. You want one? I'm sure we can come up with one. This year's Rock and Rye. Layla was just researching somebody who did something with Rock and Rye. Rock and Rye tastes very much like an old-fashioned. Finger puppets. I can see that, like a Miles finger puppet, an Adam finger puppet, Mandy finger puppet. Vodka grapefruit drink? I don't know. Imagine it would just be like a strong White Claw, maybe? Generally, I don't enjoy grapefruit, but I do like grapefruit seltzer, so... Hey. I'm still feeling rambly today. Let's rewind the Benny a little bit. We'll pop on the other Benny.
I feel like a feather in the breeze.
Here's what Benny did the next week after the show we normally do. Finger puppets of all the effing Chicago cats. That's a fair share of cats, not to mention Patty's chickens. $50-50 soda? Yeah. Lemon and lime. Well, there's also like an 80-20. If I'm just going with what's in my head this week, I'll be making like a George Eaker finger puppet. Like, shut up during the play, you damned rascals. I'll duel you both. You got it, Debbie. I just told the effing crew on the group text what I want to do for merch. I'll send them an example of what I have in mind. Vodka and grape juice is a personal passion. That sounds like the Grimace drink that kills people. I enjoyed the Grimace drink personally.
Now Helen Ward has an antidote for the blues. I'm shooting high.
Mystericon Rascals. Yeah. All of you damned rascals. Well, the word I learned in the pamphlet I got yesterday at the Newberry Library, the big pamphlet-length dual challenge poem, was shitepoke. Possibly pronounced shitpoke. Which apparently was a word for herons who are known for shitting when you poke them. Who the hell is poking them? What kind of perverts are these? Wendy, can't tell ya. Good night, Larry. Hats off to Larry. Hey, Maria, what's up? Well, Kathy, don't poke him. I learned that from a dueling pamphlet in the Oxford English Dictionary. It's a word for heron. It's also something you might call someone you found disreputable. Here's the thing, though. Oxford English Dictionary says it was first used for a disreputable person in 1905. I got a pamphlet from 1803. There's a great thing in it. You know, years and years after the Hamilton-Burr duel, there's an anecdote that Burr was reading Lawrence Sterne's Tristram Shandy. And there's a scene in there where Uncle Toby lets a fly out the window and says, "Surely the world is wide enough for thee and me." And Burr was heard to remark, "Had I read more Sterne and less Voltaire, perhaps I would have known that the world was wide enough for Hamilton and I." But you see, Matthew Carey, it didn't work on. The guy who wrote the pamphlet from yesterday included a whole bit in the poem about Uncle Toby and the fly and thinking the world is big enough for thee and me. And then after he recounts the whole story and the quote, the rest of it is like, nope, fuck this, we're dueling. He lost the duel. To Eleazar Oswald, founding father, war hero, total asshole. We're a swear out on the post show tonight.
The National Broadcasting Company is presenting the music of Benny Goodman and his orchestra from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. And now a special, Big John special, by Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
The duels were nuts. That's why I got the George Eaker speech today. Took some doing to get that one. But it's really, of all the things that ever provoked a duel, it's probably the mildest. Chris, I did in fact lose the duel to the Grimace Shake. I thought it was delicious, personally. It tastes like multi-berry, assorted berry-flavored ice cream. It is delicious. So why didn't I put out the Howl for Mayor McCheese TikTok this week? This probably looks like a weird rant if you're just following along later, because I'm just kind of responding to the comments. And you can't see them on YouTube. Tracy, congrats. That's awesome, 8.5 years. You know, on our time travel pub crawls and what have you, drink water, drink whatever you want, drink root beer. We're not gonna pressure you to drink. We don't really, hey, you want to be cool, don't you? All the cool kids are doing this. Most of us are too old for such things. Like I ever get too old for such things, you know. What flavor would a Hamburglar shake be? I'm presuming hamburger. I'm just glad they're bringing Grimace back, you know. Glad that Grimace is getting the respect he deserves. Glad that I could do Howl for Mayor McCheese and kids will know who I'm talking about now. Personally, I thought it was delicious, but you've seen the big trend is make a video of yourself taking a sip and then cut to a shot of you dead with it sprawled all over the place. Kids are having a lot of fun with this. There's a Priya. Hey, Priya. Priya and my shoes. I haven't had anything to drink at all, and not since Sunday. And Sunday was a pride party. There was definitely drinking and screaming along with ladies who lunch. But nobody else would rise. I was out there, rise! Rise! Did they rise? They did not. Annie Green Springs? I do not know that one. This just in from Mom. Dad and the cats didn't quite make it to the end of the chat tonight. Dad and Coo Cat's picture crashed on the couch. Annie Green Springs. That sounds like a monster who will kill you if you walk in the woods at night. Like, don't go to the springs or Annie Green Springs will eat you. It's a story you make up to keep kids from going to the springs. And 95% of donations come within the first 10 minutes after I wrap, so when I just go on longer, it doesn't help much. But I do, but I got nothing else going on. Right? Four-day holiday weekend, all right. Should I show this picture? I should probably show this picture. Yeah, let's see. I'll put it right there. Yep. I did not get permission to post this. It didn't show up. Like Claude Rains when he was the Invisible Man. Didn't show up. Oh, I see. It's a live picture. I gotta change it. Hang on a second. I know how to do this. That'll probably work. No, it did not. He doesn't want me to show it anyway, I'm sure. Let's remove that. Yeah.
forced reluctantly to leave Benny Goodman stomping at the Savoy. Benny Goodman's orchestra has been playing for you from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
WEAF, New York.
Octavia, it was nice. It's always nice to walk into something like that. But all right, let's. I don't know. I don't feel like being done tonight. Let's do some more. Let's put on another, a little bit more. Yeah, dodging a divorcee. Yeah.
Presenting Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
I still got 84 people tuning in. Looks like on here. My hair is a mess. I've been having sipping. This is get me ready for next week. Am I sleeping or frozen? I'm still up. Bong, 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 kabong. I don't think I'm frozen. Do I have an idea for Find a Grave? Not a one. I don't have any idea for Find a Grave right now. See you tomorrow, Susan. I'll cover all of that tomorrow in the midst of, I've been putting it off. I've been doing every other section first, but sooner or later I'm going to have to distill Hamilton into 500 words. Hey, Miles. I've been dreading that. His son's easier. His son was a brat. I'm drinking more than usual. That's okay, I didn't sleep well last night. I woke up at like 2. What's the best piece of advice I got just before I became an author? I did not get any good advice about being an author, except Daniel Pinkwater, of whose books I have several on the shelves right now, told me the mantra you need to tell yourself about having a book out is, it doesn't matter, no one cares. Just repeat that. Trisha, the third cat is Lily. It is actually my mother-in-law's cat. She is in the hospital. And we're not sure when she'll be able to take care of a cat again. So we brought Lily home with us. And she adjusted very well. She is very naughty. Very sweet cat, but we'll get on the stove. You cannot leave food anywhere. Kristen, yes, I am definitely planning to do a quiz this summer. Definitely. How many people do you think will be in the Manhattan? I get 60,000 words at an average of about 200 to 400 words a person, so probably 100 anyway. Today I got to research tontines, which I mostly know about from The Simpsons, the flying hellfish. I gotta put that episode on. Boom, it went. Miles. Miles. Yeah, with 3 cats, they've got us pretty well outnumbered, and they know it. Miles. You guys all know this by now. Oh, hey, what's this? Slow-mo vid from the coffin races in Forest Park one time. It happens to be in the deck. Do 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 do. They lost. And if he should stumble as he goes, and if he should fall, Wendy, what I have is a whole lot of dual stories going in my head, plus some stuff from the War of 1812, uniform regulations from circa the War of 1812, the process of a tontine and the mixture of a tontine coffee house, and how much, if at all, I should cover the fact of what kind of things they sold in the tontine coffee house, what kind of auctions they had, bit about whether I gave Robert Fulton the short shrift. And was it really just yesterday I was doing William Alexander Lord Sterling? Maybe that was 2 days ago. Robert Fulton, steamship inventor, who's got a grave marker nowhere near where he's actually buried at Trinity Church. I mean, it's the right cemetery. It's not technically a cenotaph, I guess. But he's in the Livingston vault on the other side of the cemetery. Supposedly with Angelica Schuyler. But nobody really knows where they put her.
Music by Benny Goodman and his orchestra. The next tune, Sandman.
Do I have footnotes for everything? Yeah. Again, I'd have to see E. But this one, the footnotes could have footnotes. Right now, it's still very rough drafty. I haven't figured out what I really need to put in there. Like, how much of the debate in the newspapers after the Philip Hamilton, George Eaker duel do I really need to put in? Because it is really interesting, but it's too much. How much of his actual speech should I put in there? Nobody really talks about what he says in that speech. Overall, it is fairly bland. Kristen, Angelica is said to be in the Livingston vault in the back.
Goodman is playing for you from the Joseph Evans Room.
I say said to be because they really don't know. They've got a little sign up for her by the Livingston vault. But if pressed, they will admit that records just say Trinity Churchyard. There's a Daughters of the American Revolution thing from 1899 that says she's in the Livingston vault. But where they got that, no one knows. Uh-oh, cat fight. This is why we stayed on late tonight. Oh, that can't be legal. Priya's moving in with her signature head clamp. Miles getting ready with his big stomp. Oh, she's going with a bite of the ear. She's going for the Mike Tyson Evander Holyfield. Oh my God! I never thought I'd see the day. Oh, he's going for the belly. That can't be legal. I'm told by wrestling people, I always thought that professional wrestling referees have the easiest job in the world because their whole job is not to notice things. Actually, the referee is directing the match. And there they go, but now they forgot they're supposed to be fighting. See, when she fights like this, she keeps her claws in. It's when she comes up and walks across me as soon as I get into bed that she takes them out. You know, this was a thing that I thought when reading the Plagius Goriliad, the pamphlet-length poem challenging Eliza Oswald to a duel. Like, come on, guys, just kiss.
And again, Benny Goodman presents his lady of song, Helen Ward, singing Alone.
They're still at it over there. Down into the haze of the neon light. Ooh, Miles just pounces. I'm going to tell them group chat about this. Let me go move that ottoman out of your way. This might scare Priya. See, yeah, okay. Priya's still a bit skittish. Mandy is making pumpkins. I don't know what kind of pumpkins. You know, Debbie, it's the post show. The effing group chat keeps me entertained. Carol, thanks for sending this article. This guy looks like a dork. I'm sure he's tougher than me. All right. I can't leave either. Post show has now gone on longer than the proper show, but I'm just kind of wobbling along. I probably should have stopped the YouTube a long time ago, but I don't think I can do that. Yeah, I probably can. But all right, everybody. I really had ought to leave. So thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. Mostly those of you who stuck around this whole time. Those of you who hit that donate button, that always helps me so much. I don't say, and I base my whole self-esteem on how we do every night, but all right, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours, telling everybody to stay safe and stay tuned in for tomorrow morning's Find a Grave Friday. But of course, most of all, stay spooky, everybody.